Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission here is, well, it's pretty straightforward. We take the stack of sources, the articles, the memos, all the historical records, and we just distill the core truth. We give you the shortcut to being truly well-informed.
And tonight, the material, it really takes us into some deep shadows, far deeper than your standard financial history. We're going deep on an institution that most people have never even heard of.
Right.
Yet it holds the key to global financial stability. Or maybe global financial control. We're talking about the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS.
People sometimes call it the central bank for central banks.
That's the one.
But when you actually dig into the sources, when you look at its founding, the word bank just feels, I don't know, totally inadequate. We're talking about a legal and financial fortress, one that was deliberately set up outside the jurisdiction of any democratic government. Our sources tonight, they paint this chilling picture. It's a history woven with threads connecting, Wall Street tycoons, the highest levels of Nazi finance, and the unelected technocrats who run global capital today.
And that is foundational insight from this material. It's the truly shocking part. The BIS was designed from day one, we're talking 1930, to be completely, utterly untouchable.
Untouchable.
It wasn't just built to survive a financial storm. It was built to be insulated from politicians, from reporters, from the law, even from acts of war. The ultimate loyalty wasn't to a country or a flag.
It was to
to international capital itself, yeah?
Okay, so let's unpack what we're pulling from the stack tonight. We've got 4 major bombshells, 4 core truths you really need to grasp about this place.
First, we're going to look at the architects. Montague Norman is this enigmatic governor of the Bank of England, and Hjalmar Schacht, who would become the financial mastermind for the Third Reich. We're going to detail how their 30-year bond was all about finance and how that completely superseded any kind of ideology.
Right. And second, we get into the specifics of this legal fortress, the almost unbelievable protections it was granted back in 1930 at the Hague Convention. We're talking lifetime legal immunity for its top people and why its headquarters in Basel are considered, quote, inviolable.
Then third, we confront the historical smoking gun. I mean, the definitive one. The BIS's active role during World War II. Specifically, the moment they transferred the national gold reserve of an invaded country, Czechoslovakia, directly into the account of the Nazi Reichsbank.
And how it was kept afloat by interest payments made in looted gold from concentration camps.
Exactly. It's a dark history. And finally, we track how it survived all of this, how it dodged being dismantled after the war, and how that historical immunity connects to its role today as this secretive club for central bankers who now control the financial destiny of, 80% of the global GDP.
So this is really the story of how unaccountable power, once created, just continues.
It's a deep one. So for anyone who wants to see the source documents for themselves, all the direct quotes, the page numbers, you can follow our live analysis threads over on X at Official Urbanus.
All right, let's start at the beginning. In the ashes of World War I, because that's where the seeds of the BIS were really sown, and the 2 main figures here are they're fascinating and honestly deeply unsettling.
They really are.
You've got Montague Norman from the Bank of England and Hjalmar Schacht, the German financial maestro. Politically, they should have been worlds apart.
Complete opposites. But they shared this one singular vision that just went beyond national politics.
Tell us about Norman. He seems like a character out of a movie.
Oh, absolutely. He ran the Bank of England from 1920 to 1944, an incredible run. The New York Times called him the overseer of Britain's invisible empire of wealth. He was famously eccentric, intensely private, hated publicity, traveled with fake names.
And prone to breakdowns, I read.
Severe nervous breakdowns. Yet the man wielded terrifying power. A single, vaguely worded speech from him could send global markets into a tailspin.
And his core motivation for creating the BIS, it seems. Well, it seems deeply anti-democratic.
It was, 100%. He was contemptuous of politicians. He saw them interfering in what he believed was a sacred technical machine of global finance.
So his goal was to build a wall.
A fortress. His explicit aim was to build an institution that was above the demands of politicians, and as he put it, insulated from the prying eyes of nosy journalists. He needed a constitution, a charter, that would guarantee its absolute independence.
And the sources say he literally asked the editor of The Economist to write it.
He did. He gave him one specific instruction. He said the language must, and I'm paraphrasing the sentiment here, work out some form of words that would place the bank beyond the reach of governments.
That is it's astonishing to just say that out loud. And the editor apparently thought it was impossible.
He did. He later recalled that the instruction was Hopelessly impossible in a democracy. I mean, it goes against the entire principle of a sovereign government having the final say. But Norman got what he wanted. He won that fight. The statutes they agreed on in 1930 enshrined total independence for the bank.
Okay, so that's Norman, the old world financial titan. Now let's look at his counterpart, Hjalmar Schacht.
Schacht. If Norman was the eccentric guardian of the old empire, Schacht was the cunning architect of Germany's recovery, and later, the man who built the economic engine for the Third Reich.
He was effective, though. You have to give him that.
Oh, brilliantly effective. He's the guy who crushed Germany's hyperinflation in the early 20s, gained huge prestige for it. He eventually becomes Hitler's Minister of Economics. The New York Times called him the iron-willed pilot of Nazi finance.
And he was proud of his ability to manipulate things, wasn't he?
Deeply proud. He even titled his own autobiography The Old Wizard. He knew what he was doing.
And the relationship between these two, Norman and Schacht, is central to this story. It started in 1923 and lasted for nearly 30 years. It even survived Schacht's war crimes trial at Nuremberg.
It's the defining feature. This bond, this loyalty to a shared financial vision, was stronger than any political ideology. Schacht was the master strategist. He saw how to use the political chaos of the time to get Norman what he wanted.
So the BIS was officially created to handle German war reparations, the Young Plan.
Right, that was the public reason. The Young Plan was the second big attempt to figure out how Germany would pay for the war. It was messy, political, and everyone hated it.
A perfect crisis for Schacht to exploit.
Precisely. He sold it as a technical solution. He argued, let's take this political hot potato out of the hands of politicians. Let's put it on a purely financial basis and have an independent bank manage it.
But what he was really doing was creating a shield.
He was creating a fortress, a supranational institution whose independence could protect German financial interests from political pressure. The Young Plan was just the Trojan horse. The BIS was the army inside.
And all of this leads to the 1930 Hague Convention. This is the moment where governments basically sign away their own sovereignty over this slice of global finance.
This is where it gets really alarming. We have to look at the legal protections they baked in right from the start. We're talking specifically about Article 10 of the BIS Constituent Charter.
Okay, break that down for us. What did Article 10 actually do?
It's sweeping. It states, and I'm quoting the essence here, that the bank, its property and assets and all deposits shall be immune in time of peace and in time of war from any measures such as expropriation, requisition, seizure, confiscation, and so on.
Any measure.
Any measure. This isn't just, standard diplomatic protection for an embassy. This is total, absolute immunity from any government action for any reason. Economic, political, military, it doesn't matter.
Wait, you have to stop on that phrase. In time of war. So you're saying if Britain, a founding member, was at war with Germany, another founding member, the British government could not seize assets held at the BIS to fund its own war effort.
They could not. The bank was legally above the conflict, above flags, above nation states. It made the bank immune to acts of war and, crucially, immune from its own member governments.
And this immunity just got stronger over time.
It was reinforced. There was a 1987 headquarters agreement with Switzerland that confirmed the BIS premises are officially inviolable.
Inviolable. What does that mean in, practical terms? Can the Swiss police walk in?
No. It means Swiss authorities, the police, regulators, anyone. They need explicit permission from BIS management just to enter the buildings. If a crime is committed on the premises by an employee, the local police can't just go in and investigate. It's treated like sovereign territory.
That's incredible. But the deepest layer of protection you pointed to in the sources? That's the one that applies to the people themselves, the technocrats.
This is the truly stunning part. The staff, especially the senior managers and directors, they get a special status, similar to that of diplomats.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. They are immune under Swiss law for life, for any acts they carried out while doing their job.
For life. So not just while they're employed.
Not just while they're employed. Forever. If a senior BIS official makes a decision today that 20 years from now is found to be part of some massive financial crime, they are shielded from prosecution in Switzerland for life.
What's the justification for that? I mean, where else in the world do you see that kind of lifetime immunity for non-diplomats?
It's highly, highly unusual. The official rationale is that it preserves the bank's operational independence. They argue that if central bankers were afraid of being prosecuted later for tough decisions they made in a crisis, they wouldn't be able to act freely.
But the practical effect is, It creates a class of unelected financial figures who are literally above the law.
That's exactly what it does. It enshrines a caste system where financial power operates outside the rules that bind everyone else.
So this fortress wasn't just built by a couple of Europeans. We need to talk about the American connection here, because this is where the hidden hand theories really start to gain traction.
The trail leads right to Wall Street, specifically to the most powerful law firm in America at the time, Sullivan and Cromwell, and to two brothers who would become giants of American foreign policy, Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles.
Allen Dulles, future director of the CIA. John Foster Dulles, future Secretary of State.
The absolute epicenter of American power. But back in the 20s and 30s, their whole world was European finance. They were the masters of brokering these incredibly complex, deliberately obscure deals to refinance Germany's war debt.
The very deals the BIS was designed to manage.
The very same ones. The Dulles brothers were brilliant at using Europe's chaos to build influence and make a profit.
And the sources point to a physical connection. A literal address.
It connects the dots perfectly. The Dulles brothers law firm was at 48 Wall Street. In the exact same building was the New York office of a bank called J. Henry Schroeder, or Schrobanko.
And Schrobanko was all in on Germany.
Deeply, inextricably invested in German industry. And here's where it gets dark. The president of Schrobanko was a close personal friend of John Foster Dulles. And one of the partners in the German parent bank was a man named Kurt von Schroeder.
That name becomes infamous.
Infamous. Kurt von Schroeder would later join the BIS board. He also became one of the key figures funneling money from German industrialists directly into Heinrich Himmler's personal slush fund for the SS.
So from the very beginning, the BIS wasn't just some neutral clearinghouse. It was structurally intertwined with this transnational network of power. The Bank of England, Nazi financiers, top Wall Street lawyers, all sharing an address and a philosophy.
A philosophy that put international capital above everything else.
Which brings us right to the ultimate test of that philosophy, the start of World War II.
You would think the outbreak of war would have destroyed an institution built on cooperation between what were now enemy nations. But the BIS didn't just survive. In many ways, it thrived. It became a critical financial artery for the Third Reich.
That's the part that's so hard to understand. How could that even work? You have British, French, American staff working alongside Germans in Basel while their countries are at war.
The answer is in the culture of international finance, which they believed transcended national loyalty. Now, the formal board meetings, those were suspended. But the day-to-day operations, the relationships between the staff, the sources describe them as cordial, professional, and productive throughout the war.
Cordial.
Cordial. It's a chilling word to use, isn't it? The institutional goal was just to keep the ledgers balanced. It didn't matter what was happening outside the bank's walls.
The sources have some specific, almost unbelievable examples of this.
They do. Just look at the leadership.
Yeah.
The BIS president during the war was an American, Thomas McKittrick. He worked side by side with the German assistant general manager, a man named Paul Heckler.
And Heckler was
a card-carrying member of the Nazi Party. He would sign his internal BIS memos with Heil Hitler. And McKittrick, the American president, later admitted that he and Heckler managed the bank together, cordially, for the entire duration of the war.
It's a profound, almost sociopathic level of detachment.
It is. It's a demonstration of this idea of supranational loyalty, the belief that the flow of capital is more important than war, politics, or any kind of human cost. And that brings us to the definitive act of complicity, the Czech gold transfer.
March 1939, this is the smoking gun.
This is the moment the BIS crosses the line from a questionable neutrality to active collaboration with an aggressor. On March 15, 1939, the German army marches into Prague. Czechoslovakia ceases to exist.
And just 3 days later?
3 days later, Reichsbank officials show up at the Czech National Bank. Under duress, with threats of violence, they force the Czech directors to sign transfer orders for 23.1 metric tons of their national gold reserve.
Where is this gold actually being held?
This is the crucial detail. It was physically sitting in the vaults of the Bank of England in London. But it was legally held in an account belonging to the BIS. The order was to move the gold from the Czech sub-account to the Reichsbank sub-account, all within the BIS's legal structure.
So the Bank of England, run by BIS co-founder Montague Norman, had physical control. But the BIS was the legal facilitator.
Exactly. And the BIS executed the order, without question, without delay.
Norman could have stopped it. He was in London. He could have just said no.
He could have. He had physical possession of the gold. He knew a friendly nation had just been invaded. But he chose not to intervene. He prioritized the institutional independence, the technical neutrality of the BIS, over stopping the Nazis from getting their hands on what was essentially the sinews of war.
This caused a huge political firestorm in London, didn't it?
A massive one. Brendan Bracken, who was a close ally of Winston Churchill, stood up in Parliament and said that after this, the Bank of England may no longer be looked on as the safest place in the world. It was a devastating blow to the reputation. The bank had chosen a treaty over its allies.
So how did the BIS defend this? What was their counter-narrative? They couldn't just pretend the invasion didn't happen.
Their defense was the ultimate technocratic dodge. It rested entirely on the idea of mechanical neutrality. They argued the BIS had to be strictly neutral, that it couldn't get involved in political questions.
But seizing a country's gold reserve is a political question.
Of course it is. But they claimed that as long as the paperwork was in order, the right stamps, the right signatures, they had no choice. They had to execute the transaction in the usual manner. Their official line was that there was no alternative but to carry out the instructions received.
It's the ultimate bureaucratic excuse, reducing the plunder of a nation to a simple matter of paperwork.
And that mindset, that commitment to technical procedure, allowed the BIS to become completely integrated into the Nazi war economy. They didn't just transfer assets. The bank's own survival came to depend on the Nazis.
How so? Tell us about the financial lifeline the Reichsbank gave them.
It's incredible. By 1943, the interest payments the BIS received from the German Reichsbank accounted for 82% of the BIS's total income.
82%. So functionally, the Nazi state was subsidizing the bank to keep its stores open.
Completely. And these weren't just regular payments. After March 1940, as Germany conquered Europe, the Reichsbank started paying the BIS in gold.
Looted gold.
Looted gold. The vast majority of Germany's wartime gold reserves, over 80%, was plundered from the central banks of occupied countries like Belgium and the Netherlands. The BIS's own records show they accepted at least 2 metric tons of stolen Dutch gold.
And the story gets even darker when you trace the source of some of that gold.
It enters the realm of the truly grotesque. The sources confirm that the Reichsbank's gold hoard included metal stolen from concentration camp victims, specifically what was called dental gold, gold fillings extracted from the teeth of the murdered.
And this was melted down and mixed in with the rest.
It was processed through special accounts at the Reichsbank, accounts that were then used directly or indirectly to make the interest payments that kept the BIS financially solvent during the war.
And who was the man at the Reichsbank overseeing all of this?
A man named Emil Pohl. He was the vice president of the Reichsbank. He was also a director of the BIS throughout the war. And he maintained a close professional friendship with the American BIS president, McKittrick.
What happened to Pohl after the war?
He was arrested and tried for war crimes at Nuremberg. He was convicted specifically for his role in overseeing the accounts that processed valuables stolen from concentration camp victims. So you have a convicted war criminal on the board of the BIS, whose friend is the American president of the BIS, overseeing a system that converts genocide into liquid capital.
Okay, let's just pause here. We need to run the truth meter on the BIS's central claim that it was strictly neutral during World War II.
Based on all the evidence, the Czech gold transfer being financially dependent on the Reichsbank, accepting looted gold, having a convicted war criminal on his board, and the fact that the Axis powers controlled over 67% of the bank's voting stock by 1940, the claim of strict neutrality is highly implausible.
It was functional collaboration. They were providing an essential service to the Third Reich, a way to launder plunder, a way to access neutral currency markets, a way to keep the financial streams open.
They were the channel for the sinews of war. They made sure the flow of money was never interrupted by something as inconvenient as a world war or morality.
That moral failure is exactly what should have led to its downfall after the war.
It should have. And there was a major push to make that happen.
So, given this history, this deep collaboration with the Nazis, the looted gold, the whole sordid story, it seems like a complete no-brainer that the Allies would have just dismantled the BIS the second the war was over. But it's still here. How did it survive?
The battle for its future took place in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference. This was the big meeting in New Hampshire where they were designing the entire post-war financial system, the IMF, the World Bank.
And the U.S. Treasury was leading the charge to get rid of it.
They were, absolutely relentlessly. The effort was spearheaded by the U.S. Treasury Secretary Henry Morgenthau Jr. and his top economist, Harry Dexter White. They saw the BIS as this toxic relic of a bygone era and, frankly, as a collaborator.
Well, he was pretty blunt about it, wasn't he?
He famously went after the American BIS president, McKitrick, in public. He said he was an American president doing business with the Germans while our American boys are fighting Germans.
That's about as direct an accusation of treason as you can get. So with that kind of pressure, how did the BIS survive? Did the resolution to close it fail?
That's the crazy part.
Yeah.
It didn't fail. A resolution calling for the liquidation of the BIS actually passed at the Bretton Woods conference.
So what happened?
It was thwarted. After the conference, powerful vested interests, especially the Bank of England, but also parts of the U.S. State Department and Wall Street, started lobbying intensely behind the scenes to just ignore the resolution.
And what were their arguments? How did they justify keeping it open?
They used a few key arguments. The first was just classic bureaucratic inertia. They said it was too complicated to dismantle.
The old "it's too complicated" defense.
A classic. They argued that since it was a Swiss corporation protected by an international treaty, you'd need the consent of all these governments, including former enemies, and it would be a legal nightmare. The second argument was utility.
Meaning it was still useful.
Right. The Bank of England, in particular, insisted that the BIS had experts, it had infrastructure, and it would be essential for settling all the messy post-war currency problems in Europe. They painted it as this reliable, existing tool, unlike the brand-new, untested IMF and World Bank.
So basically, the technocrats who valued expertise and existing systems won out over the reformers who wanted to make a clean break with the past.
That's exactly what happened. The survival of the BIS was a huge victory for that old guard. It meant that the core principle of the bank financial independence, free from democratic oversight, protected by lifetime immunity, was preserved. It got a new lease on life.
And that really sets the stage for what the BIS is today, the ultimate technocrat club.
It does. Today, the BIS is the absolute cornerstone of global financial regulation. It's the permanent meeting place, the central think tank, for all the governors of the world's most important central banks.
We're talking countries that represent, what, the vast majority of the global economy?
Roughly 4/5 of global GDP.
Okay.
If a central bank matters to the global financial system, its governor is in Basel for those meetings.
You hear all the time that central bankers are no more powerful than politicians. How does the BIS actually institutionalize that power?
It does it primarily through something called the Basel Accords, Basel, and now III. These are essentially the rule books for global banking. They set the standards for how much capital a bank needs to hold, how it manages risk, how much liquidity it has.
But they're just recommendations, right? The BIS can't pass laws in the U.S. or Japan.
That's the genius of the mechanism. They are technically recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
But if your country's banking system doesn't comply with the Basel standards, you risk being effectively frozen out of the international financial system. Your banks will be seen as unsafe. So it gives this treaty-protected, unelected body de facto regulatory power over the entire world.
And all of these world-changing rules are decided in that confidential, clubby atmosphere that Montague Norman wanted from the start.
The atmosphere is everything. The meetings in Basel are designed to be a safe space for central bankers. Total confidentiality. Soundproofed floors. No official minutes are taken of the most sensitive conversations.
And why? What's the point of all that secrecy?
According to the people who attend, it allows them to say what we really think and believe, to talk openly about their problems and their experiences.
And sources are pretty clear about what they're actually talking about behind those closed doors.
They are.
Yeah.
Beyond monetary policy, one of the most common topics of conversation, often over fine Swiss wine, is the stupidity of finance ministers.
Wow.
It just shows that deep-seated disdain for democratic interference. It's the original mission of the bank, alive and well. They see themselves as having a celestial purpose, as the high priests of finance, which puts them above normal accountability.
Let's connect that immunity, that sense of being above it all, to a really concrete modern example. The sources highlight the case of Argentina's debt crisis.
This is the perfect example of how that 1930s legal fortress works today. In the early 2010s, Argentina defaulted on its debt. That led to lawsuits from so-called vulture funds creditors who bought the debt for pennies and were now suing for the full amount.
And they were trying to seize Argentine government assets all over the world.
Exactly. They were targeting Argentine naval ships, presidential planes, and especially their foreign currency reserves held in banks in New York or London. So, to protect its money from being seized, Argentina did something very clever.
It sent its money to the BIS.
It shipped its reserves to Basel for safekeeping at the bank for international settlements.
And the BIS used its special legal status to shield those deposits.
It did. In 2012, the BIS invoked its founding treaty and its headquarters agreement with Switzerland. It legally shielded the Argentine deposits from the creditors. The Swiss government confirmed that the funds held at the BIS could not be touched.
So on one hand, you could say it was protecting a sovereign nation from predatory creditors, but on the other hand,
It's an unsettling parallel to the 1930s. Then, the bank used its immunity to process Nazi gold. Today, it uses that same immunity to shield a member country's assets from legitimate debt claims in international courts.
So it's acting as the ultimate, unchallengeable sanctuary for capital. It can pick and choose when to apply its immunity to alter the outcome of these huge financial disputes.
That's the power. The fundamental power is the ability to operate outside the agreed-upon rules of the international system whenever it chooses. The fortress still stands, and its immunity is still absolute.
It really all comes back to that celestial purpose phrase from the sources, this idea that they are on a higher mission, a mission for monetary stability that just supersedes politics or law or accountability.
It's the DNA of the institution. It was founded by men who distrusted democracy, and that ethos is clearly embedded in its operations to this day.
This has been a really deep dive. The history of the BIS is it's far more complex and morally compromised than anyone really talks about. Let's just boil it down to the 3 absolute bombshells you need to take away from this.
First, the BIS was deliberately founded by a British financial titan, Montague Norman, and a German strongman, Hjalmar Schacht, on one core principle: to be completely free from political control. And that independence was locked in by a treaty giving its senior staff lifetime legal immunity.
Second, its wartime operation wasn't neutral. It was one of deep functional collaboration with the Third Reich. This meant transferring the Czech national gold reserve to the Nazis and allowing its own operations to be funded by interest from the Reichsbank, paid with looted gold, including gold from concentration camp victims.
And third, it survived. It dodged liquidation after the war, and today it remains this secretive, treaty-protected club for central bankers. Through things like the Basel Accords, it sets the rules for the entire global banking system, for 4/5 of the world's GDP, all without any real public accountability.
The new headquarters building, the Tower of Basel, is described in the sources as looking like something out of a 1970s James Bond film. It's this imposing symbol of an elite vision of finance, one that operates outside and above the normal rules. The citadel, born in the shadows of war and debt, still stands.
But the question you really have to ask yourself is this: if the ultimate authority for global finance has absolute legal immunity and operates beyond the reach of any elected official, who really owns the future of the global economy?
Yeah.
And who is holding these high priests of money accountable?
To get the full dive into all of our source material, with the citations, the context, our complete analysis, make sure you subscribe at theofficialurban.substack.com.
And thread this conversation on X with the hashtag #UrbanOdysseyTruth. What's your take? Was the BIS just being mechanically neutral, or was it something else? Let us know. Reply to @officialurbanus.
We'll catch you next time, digging deeper in the shadows of power.